Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And today I'm reviewing the first 3 of the Nano 9 games. This is a series of games that involve, well, 9. There's going to be 9 cards, 9 dice, and 9 tokens in the games, and the games are constructed around that core format. This, I believe, are the first 3. The only 3 that are out, but I believe it's meant to be part of a series of 9 total, and we're going to go over each of these 3, and there is a game mode that I haven't played, we'll talk about that as well, but let's go over these 3 one at a time, starting off, and, well, timestamps down below. This won't follow my usual format by the very nature of it, but we'll go ahead and let's dive into this. But let's start off with what I personally think is the best of the 3 games, which is Empire. Empire is, well, it's a game of trying to build out a bunch of buildings. You're going to have your starting card over here, so you're going to have a market card over here, you're going to have your central factory, which is going to go on the board, and you'll have your, your year track over here. These might have to go next to each other as you get more resources, but we're not going to focus on that. In general, I'm going to be focusing high level on how these games play, not every little detail, but you're going to be going ahead and then laying out the rest of these cards, flipping some of them, and then putting them out in a bit of a row, so you have an access to more buildings you can build from. You're going to make sure that you have one of each track. So for example, right now, we don't actually have the red track, so we're going to flip this one at a time. We got our yellow track. Good. We have a yellow track in there. We're going to keep flipping cards one at a time until, boom, there we go. Now we have at least one red, one yellow, one brown, and one blue over here. So the fact that there's more of these brown ones over here, not a problem. From there, you're going to have the actual trackers over here that you're going to be utilizing. You're going to be using these particular tokens to track a variety of things, starting them off in the 2, 2, and 4 from this track, and then these are the resources you're going through. Now, every round you can take a single action, and you're going to use a single action of 4 possible actions to try to build up your economy across 15 turns of the game, 30 years. Each turn is going to be 2 years as you move up this chart. You're going to have to pay maintenance costs for buildings and potentially over population of workers in the game as you hit different points on those tracks, and you're trying to get as much profit as possible in the game. You're going to, every single turn, take 1 of 4 actions, although you could pay capital to take additional actions. You want to keep your capital as high as possible, and capital is also profit, sort of. Whenever you generate capital, whenever you generate a yellow resource, you can either put on the capital track, where it will be used for in-game costs, or on the profit track, where it can no longer be used for in-game costs, but this is ultimately how you get as many points as possible in the game. You're going to have your worker dice, which will start at 6 over here, your manager die, which is going to be used for a few things which we won't get into, and the 4 actions you can take every turn. You're going to have a market die where you roll every round. That's going to determine the current market prices for your product, how much you could trade these in at different ratios to get capital or profit for your engines. And then from there, you can either sell goods at the market prices to get as much as possible from any of the buildings you have. You can build a new building from this row over here, putting it down, possibly triggering an event. You're going to look at the building to the right of it, possibly triggering an event depending on which phase you are as far as the tracking the years over here. And then you're also going to have the opportunity to go ahead and get more workers, where you're going to add another die or rotate the dice up 1 and possibly shift workers from your central factory or from any connected buildings to other buildings. So I can go ahead and start the process of trying to get this a little bit more populated and ready to produce. And then lastly, you can go ahead and produce, where on every produced factory, you're going to have the opportunity, every produced building, you're going to have the opportunity to move up those tracks, assuming you have enough workers equal to the capacity of that building. That's how that's going to play out over there. And you're going to get extra things. The buildings are going to cascade off one another. So for example, if this had 5 workers, then both of these tracks would go up 2, 1 for each of those buildings. The more you have of a type, the better your engine will be. That's the basic game. You're going to do that for 15 turns, 30 years, 2 turns per year, and you're going to try to take as many actions as possible to try to figure out your economy in the game to score as much as you possibly can. That's how you play, well, Empires. I think this was Empire. So, thoughts on this one? This to me feels like the meatiest game of the bunch. This to me feels like the best implemented game, the one that feels the most natural for the component limitation that we have on the table. And we will be talking about the component limitation as we go through this. I didn't love the game though. The game to me felt like a exercise in a whole lot of inability to get enough things done because you're drained on resources for the first half of the game. Things do open up as you go through it, absolutely, that's the entire point of the game, but the first half of the game just feels like an entirely tight resource crunch. That said, I think it is a good game design. I think it's a great game design. I can see how well implemented everything is and how much there is to juggle and think about in a very small condensed package over here. Not for me, but I do appreciate the game design. That's going to be the first of them. That's going to be Empire. From there, we're going to move to the next one. This one is probably my favorite of the 3, but not necessarily the best of the 3. That's a different question. But City Planner has you building out the most efficient city. This is the only one of the set that is potentially 2-player. I probably should have mentioned that. This is a solo game, this is a solo game, and City Planner is a solo or 2-player game. You see, you're going to lay down these city blocks in the game. We're going to lay down these blocks. Let's see if we can get them out over here. Block 1 over here. And I don't know if the order necessarily matters. You can put them however you want. But you're going to put out block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4, block 5, block 6, and block 7. You're going to have these blocks in the game, and you're going to be rolling a die because you have that limitation again. You have that limitation. We're going to take one of these for ourselves. We're not going to set up for 2 players. In a 2-player game, you're basically just taking turns doing things and trying to see who can score better. In a 1-player game, you're just trying to get the best score possible with a bit of a metric as far as how well you did. And you're going to have these dice over here, and these dice are going to be used every round to assign which building is going to be currently the one that is activated. So we have a 3 over here, we have a 2, we have a 3 over here, we have a 6, we have a 6 over here, we have the 2, and then lastly we have this over here. Now this off the hand, we're going to see the first little nitpick I have over here, which is these 2 dice are used together to track your rounds. You have 8 rounds in the game, you're going to use these 2 dice together, which is where we start with the component limitation aspect, which is I personally think that when you have a small box game or a component limitation, it should feel natural. Using 2 dice to represent 8 rounds, as opposed to just having an 8-sided die or some other round tracker, for example, on this sheet, feels like they're intentionally trying to find an excuse to utilize the 9 cards, 9 dice, and 9 cubes in the game in a way that does not feel intuitive at all. It almost feels, and this is a critique I have around the whole set, a lot of these elements don't feel as intuitive to the game design limitations as I would like. It feels like someone had a specific design goal, and while the end results are very cool, I'd rather something that felt like it was designed for the end result as opposed to designed around a restriction that gets you to the end result. So, don't get me wrong, the fact that you're using this as your round tracker, not a big deal at all. I just don't love what it says about the design goal of the series. But that said, let's go back to the game over here. You're going to be tracking your victory points and your income on this track over here, your money on this track, and you're going to use those for the game because the goal of the game is to try to, across 8 rounds, build up the best combination of points and money in the game. Money's primarily used as a tool to get you more points because you can shift up to 3 dice a turn by paying dollars for them, by paying money to shift them. And you're going to shift them because different things play off of each other. You're going to have buildings in the game that reward you if things didn't score, which is not the best, but it could be a good compensating factor. You're also going to have buildings that reward you for other buildings. So you'll have buildings that reward you for points and buildings that reward you for income. So for example, and then we have this reroll building over here, which lets you get $1 plus a reroll next turn, which gives you a little bit more flexibility. But right now we currently have 1, 1, and 1, and we have this building over here, which likes to give you points for your greens if you have them. But we're also going to have to save 1 for every round. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep this. I'm going to pay $1 to go ahead and shift this to over here, rotating that. That'll give us another scoring multiplier there. We're going to keep this, keep this, keep this. The only other place we could try, it would cost us a lot to shift that there, so we're not going to do that there. And then we're going to go ahead and I think we will keep this for next round. And that's going to be our building structure over here. So right about now, we're going to get $1 over here. We use $2 to shift buildings. We're going to get $1 in a reroll next round. And these buildings are going to be 1 victory point, 1 victory point, 1 victory point, but these give you multipliers. So right now, you're going to multiply, because you have 2 buildings, you're going to multiply it by 3, so you're going to get a total of 9 victory points. I'm going to put that on the chart. You're going to go to next round where this building is saved or passed to your opponent if you're playing a 2-player game, and the rest of these will be re-rolled. You'll knock the die down by 1, and don't forget we have 1 re-roll this round, and you'll proceed to go ahead and roll for each of these buildings again. That's the game. Go through across 8 rounds, try to have the best score possible, either against an opponent or against, beat your own score, and that is how you play City Planner. Overall thoughts and opinions on this one? This to me is my favorite of the group. I don't love how the game kind of has you rolling 1 die at a time for each thing. It feels a little fiddly. I almost wish there was a better way to do that, but if you roll them all at once, how do you know which one's for which? So I don't know necessarily how to handle that. I just don't know how to handle that, but I would have loved the game to move faster than rolling 1 die at a time. It might sound like a small nitpick. Do that for 8 rounds, rolling a single die at a time. It is a little more irritating you'd think, but not a big deal. Past that, though, the game design, while enjoyable, does come across as a little bit repetitive, especially as a solo game. As playing against another player, at least there's that competitive aspect of beating another person, but when you're just trying to beat your own score with no real restrictions, and that's true of all of these games, by the way, it just doesn't feel that satisfying. The moves are mostly what you'd expect. The moves, I think, are mostly fairly obvious as to the optimal move in this game, and while it is enjoyable to try to get as many points as possible, it felt on the lighter side. The most enjoyable by far, for me personally, from this series of games, but it did feel on the lighter side in a way that just... it felt okay. It felt totally okay. Then we move to Railways, which is my least favorite of the trio over here. Railways is, again, following the 9-card design, and this is one where, again, that 9-card limitation, as opposed to in Empire Planners or City Planners, in City Planners, my complaint around the design goal feels almost like a nitpick, meaning if the game ultimately works, but it feels like components were specifically used for a specific purpose that didn't have to be used, but hey, it had to fit the design requirements, so sure. In Railways, on the other hand, it feels like a limitation that definitely made the game just feel Well, we'll get to it. So, in Railways, you're going to have your track over here, which is going to track pollution, you're going to track your income and your profit, and they're going to be placing down 4 of these into a grid. Let's put them down like this so we can just put them down over here. You're going to place down any 4 of these action cards into a grid, and the remaining cards are going to be used. You're going to have 3 of them as being your action cards for the round, and then the other 3, let's move this up a drop over here. You have 3 of them being your action cards for the round, and then the other one is going to be your deck. Which basically means as you play through the game, you're constantly drawing 1 new card and using the remaining cards shuffled up. I feel like more cards could have been a good thing, but then it would have broken the whole 9-card design thing, so instead, let's constantly have a deck of 1 card and shuffle up the remaining action cards. Now, there will be people who will say that there's a strategic aspect of knowing the cards, and I hear that. I don't deny that. I feel a different game design would be better than shuffling a single card and pulling and drawing back up from the rest. It might work. It wasn't for me. But past that, what are you actually doing in the game? Well, in the game, you're taking a variety of actions. You're going to use the dice over here. I'm not going to bother pulling them out over here. But you're taking different actions to basically, you're going to have buildings on these various colors over here. And then you're trying to make deliveries of passengers to a variety of buildings. So let's actually take out some dice over here. So you're going to be taking actions every round. You're going to take 2 actions each round over here from these cards. And you're going to take those 2 actions as you have these passengers that are trying to go to specific buildings. But you also have to build links first, which is why you have these cubes over here. The downside is you only have a handful of cubes that can actually be used on the map, which is not the most fun aspect. You have a handful of cubes that can be used over here, and you're going to very quickly run out of rail links that are going to be used to build out your network. So you have the opportunity to build networks over here by discarding rail cards. So I can discard, rail card and a rail card, and I can also go ahead and use this over here to be able to create that. There's going to be an aspect of pollution if you overuse symbols multiple times on a card, but I can say, hey, look, we have this building, or in fact, let's use this one. I'm going to use this building on this side over here, and then these 2 rail links, and we're going to build out that rail link over there. Ta-da, we're good to go. Actually, I don't even have to use this because I have that symbol here. So you're going to build up the rail links. But from there, you're trying to make deliveries of passengers to different things, and you'll get more profit the more areas you go through. But you have this action economy, which gives you a bunch of things to manage, because you're going to have your worker dice over here on the side. You have a limited number of workers. You're trying to balance that up. You have the opportunity to build buildings off of other chains, where a building will be either another color if it's next to another building, or just red if not. And each building, depending on what you deliver to them, will have different results as far as both how you earn money. Well, you'll earn money the same way for each building, but you'll have different end results as far as what you can do in terms of converting your income to your capital to your income in the game as you try to figure out the best scoring. There's a lot going on in this game. This game is meaty. This game has a lot to think about. I do not want to take away in any way from the actual design here. I think this is a really meaty engine of a game that is incredibly cool what was done with only 9 cards, 9 dice, and 9 cubes. I just don't like the restriction of 9 dice, 9 cards, and 9 cubes. The game feels like you don't have enough railway links to really build anything fun. Is it a tight, meaty engine in that sense? Yes, it is. But it takes away from some of the fun and the enjoyment of actually building out a fun network. You have a limitation in dice. You have a limitation in cards. The whole thing feels like a brain-burner experience. Again, I do not want to take away from the game design. I think the game design here is incredible, and a lot was done here. Just the things that were done for me weren't fun. It felt a lot like work with an artificial restriction that even further removed from how much enjoyment I have from the game. And again, at the end of it, it all comes down to a point scoring optimization where your goal is to beat your own score, and that's basically it, which also isn't as much my genre. Now, lastly, I will say from this, we have the Empire Planners over here, which I have not played this. By the time I got to this, I think I was emotionally done with these 3 games. This is a way to combine all the components into another game. I did not play through it. I wasn't quite as interested at that point, but it is another way to experience the game. Let me actually put that back in here. You can store it in any of the boxes or in the slipcase. But that's basically the 3 games. So, quick summary of the games. We have 3 games over here. We have Empire Plan, we have City Planner, Empire, and Railways. From the 3 games, City Planner I enjoyed as a fun, lighter game, but not enough to capture my interest, especially not over multiple plays. Empire is one that I felt was the best overall. It felt like the best design game that felt the most natural to the components at play, but for me it just felt more mentally taxing, but I acknowledge that there's totally a good game there. And Railways, I'm not willing to say it's not a good game. I'm hesitant to ever say something's not a good game, but it did feel artificially restricted to the components, more so than any other game. Railways felt like it really was a victim of the design choice around the game, even though the end result is a thinky game. It felt constrictive and really pushed around those components in a way that just didn't result in a game that I enjoyed, or one that I'm hesitant to say too many good things about it, but also being hesitant to say too many bad things about it. What I can say is 2 of these games I did not enjoy, and 1 of them I was totally fine with and not overly impressed by. And that's what we have over here. I wish I was nicer about this particular set. I think the reason I'm more critical in this particular video, in this particular series, than I am sometimes, is this set overall very much felt like it was a design goal in place, and everything was built around the design goal, as opposed to feeling like a natural fit. I've played a lot of button shy games. I'm a huge fan of a lot of button shy games, and something about them feels more natural. I don't know if it's the cards, maybe just the fact that you have 18 cards works better, as opposed to 9 cards, 9 dice, 9 cubes, makes the whole thing feel a bit more fiddly and a bit less natural. It's okay. People might like these. I sadly don't. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.